on Beijing's reaction. Earlier, we spoke to our correspondent, Charles Pellegrin.
In China, the G7 is presented as a club of rich nations that doesn't really take into consideration the interests of developing nations. And China presents itself as a defender of developing nations' interests because until not long ago, it really was firmly in the camp of those developing nations. And we saw this, obviously, with the distribution of vaccines and declaring vaccines a global public good. But we also see this in the way that China presents, for example, its Belt and Road Initiative, that China is a country that can provide financing for infrastructure needs around the world in developing areas, infrastructure needs that are so important to developing economies. And this strategy of presenting itself as a defender of developing nations has paid off in many ways, because these developing countries often don't either ignore or look the other way when it comes to some of these criticisms coming from Western countries, from these G7 countries when it regards human rights, or actually sometimes even actively defend China's position. And China's position as a huge engine in the world economy also plays in its favor. And on Thursday, actually, Beijing passed a new law that seeks to counteract the sanctions that have been imposed on China because of these human rights abuses by Western countries, by imposing sanctions on any international companies, multinational companies that would try to conform to these new sanctions. So really putting these companies between a rock and a hard place.